Thanks for joining today. Today we're going to show you our OPC-Integrator. So this is our launch in APAC. We have been working on this tool for a few months to develop a tool that allows us to help our clients push data into and out of OPC. So it is an integration platform, and today we're going to be focusing on the first part, which is working with Excel and OPC. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm joining you actually today from Montreal and typically in Calgary. I will explain the tool and why we built the tool, and then I'll turn it over to Mary Lynn. She will be doing the heavy lifting and showing you the software. We also have a few other folks from Emerald on the call. Jess Regal, who is the lead programmer on this software tool, and Sue Familia, who is another one of our implementation specialists, and she is an expert on our similar tool, but for P6 Loader. So if you have different questions, we should be able to tackle it. I also see Valerie Nicholson, another implementation specialist with lots of P6 Loader experience. So we've got lots of people who can tackle any questions that may arise. So let's talk about Oracle Primavera Cloud. Some of you may well be using it, or you might be exploring whether this could be a good fit for you. Mary Lynn will show you the tool a little bit. The focus is not on OPC itself. So OPC is just for short for the Oracle Primavera Cloud. That tool years ago was called Prime. So it is purely a cloud-based software. There's no on-premise version. It's 100% in the Oracle Cloud. So it's similar to P6 Web. It's similar to P6 Web, purely cloud. So there's no client. And it's got some different structures and formats to it. So some of you may be exploring that tool. So like we have with building out schedules, portfolios, we have common struggles. And one of them, big time, is, of course, the data entry. So getting your data into the system. Now, some of you may import projects into the system. It's one way to build data into the system. But if you're starting from scratch and you need to put together the codes, the workspaces, the configured fields, the calendars, etc., it can be quite a heavy lift. So data entry is always a consideration, and we're always looking for ways to do that better. Your team might start to explore integration with your other systems, like your ERP systems, maybe a cost control system that you might be looking at, maybe Unifier, if you're using Unifier to do all your paperwork and all your costing. So integration is always a consideration. So you need to get two different tools to talk to each other to avoid data entry, mistakes that can happen, of course, when we do data entry, and just streamline your processes. So it's always a challenge, and more companies are looking at how can we handle that. So we're going to show you using Excel in our example, but this is a stepping stone to being able to do it with other tools. And dealing with importing and exporting. So some of you might get schedules from third-party players. So dealing with that, or you might have some people on your team that are not scheduling experts. So you want to be able to find a way to gather the data of how the schedule is going to go, how the detailed tasks are going to go, and you want to get that data in. So you don't want to have to retype it. So we're going to show you some of what we've built so far in this version of our OPC-Integrator. So this is our first version. As I mentioned, we've been working on it for a few months, and we finally have got enough framework and enough in the tool to start launching it and getting it out to clients. So in this first version, we're going to show you how we can create and edit WBSs, create and edit activities, create and edit resource assignments, so the resource is performing the work. Now, when you're doing those sorts of things, you usually also want to code your activities. So activity codes and what's called configure fields or user-defined fields up in the system. Okay, so in that case, we can create, we can edit, we can order them. And that's important when you have big, long lists, like equipment lists, maybe geographical areas of your building, for example, or disciplines, that sort of thing. So we'll show you how you can take advantage of our OPC integrator to get that data in the system. Now, another big thing that's important when you're working with P6, with OPC, is if you're gathering data from other users, you don't want to overwhelm them with the data that we have in these tools. It's considerable, the amount of date fields, budget fields, etc. So we wanted to make sure that you can see and share just the fields and data that's important to you. So that's a big point that we've put into this version. Now, as we continue the development of this tool, and we're working fast on the next version, we're going to expand what we're able to work with and push and pull, upload, download, import, export, if you will. Projects, the tasks, which is similar to steps in P6. It's a little broader and different feature that they put into OPC. So that's a nice piece of OPC. So we'll start to be able to push and pull those in and out. Also scopes, which is another feature that's not in P6. So that's an OPC feature. Workspaces, that's similar to an EPS structure. Not identical, because they've done some nice things in OPC on the way you can repurpose fields. And then I think actually maybe grouping the Excel columns, we've already got it. So it's in this version. And we'll work on things like deleting resource assignments, deleting codes, etc. And then again, not too far down the road, we'll work on more deleting, more controls in the cell values, working with relationships, etc. Okay, so this is sort of our roadmap of where we want to go. So from our perspective, there's going to be a lot of benefits. We have numerous clients using our P6 loader, and their considerable usage is saving them a lot of time in what they're building in and managing the system as well. So we've got clients who use it to administer all sorts of pieces to the system. So I think you're going to see some potential benefits there. And the out-of-the-box functionality, although you can do some importing and exporting, it's just not flexible. That's really where I think you're going to find there's some really nice features that we've built into this first version, and we'll continue to expand on those as we go. So what I wanted to do was turn it over to Mary Lynn. She will show us how it works, and we'll take a deep dive on the features inside of it. So let me take over the feature. On your way, Marilyn.
Okay, I'm just getting my screen share going, and we should be off to the races, so to speak.
Okay.
Okay, so where I would like to just start off with this, I'm not sure how many people have seen the inside of OPC, how it's structured. Schedule information basically is schedule information, and it is what it is. But the thing is, it is structured a little different in OPC than perhaps you're used to if you see it in P6. So this is the screen I'm starting at. The reason I'm starting here is because I've created a workspace, I've got projects, and I've got a program, and I've got a portfolio. Now, we're not too worried about these two, but this will give us access, easy access to the projects we want to have a look at. So just before we go in and look at specifically the OPC-Integrator, let's have a quick look at exactly what is offered inside OPC. In other words, out of the box. If I want to, for example, in the scheduling world, a lot of times you've got projects that have already been created, maybe created and finished, whatever the case is, but there's some of that information that you can use in your next schedule. And as Nicole was talking, that saves you re-entering it. And it's going to save data entry issues, things like that, because it doesn't matter how good a typist you are, somewhere along the line, there's going to be a mistake eventually. So if I go in and I decide, okay, I've got a file here, I want to grab the WBS and the activity information out of that file. Well, the way OPC is structured, I first need to go to those tabs because they live under, of course, the schedule app. I've got activities and WBS. So I'll go to the WBS first. And you do have to visit each tab to grab the template with the data if that's what you want to do, and that's what I'll do here. So go to Action, Download, Import Template, and I want with data. So all you do is just click and say you want it with the data. And I'm going to say okay. And it's ready for download. That's not a big WBS. There is not much there. And I'm just going to hit F5 here because it should bring what I need to the top here. Okay, this, I did look at this right before the webinar. My apologies. It has a time clock on it, and here's my template for WBS. I was just trying to get some of these out of the way because they actually come from some internal settings that are in the software. So I want to download the WBS, and I've got that spreadsheet, and I'll just show you what that spreadsheet comes out looking like for you to actually start using. So I've got the instructions, and the WBS comes out with whatever information is in your file. And of course, if you're going to put it into another file, you're going to have to make some updates. So I just wanted you to see what that looks like. Now I have one that has the required changes already in it, so we'll look at that in just a minute. I'm just going to close this for now, and I want to go and pull the activities. So I'm just going to go to activities the same way I did WBS and ask it to pull the template with the data. So if I want all that information going into my new file, it's all on those sheets. So I'm going to go to Actions, Download, Import Template, Template with Data. I'm going to say okay, and it shouldn't take a long time. There we go. It's ready. It's ready to download. And I'll just grab it. There we go. Takes a second to open it. Now, in this case, you'll see it grabs everything. Now, that's something to be aware of because when we go and look at the OPC-Integrator, you've got more control over what's being pulled out, as you'll see, and what you're going to have to deal with if you're sending the sheet to somebody else to update. Because, for example, here's my instructions. I've got activities, I've got relationships, and I've got assignments. So the way this template works, if I want to change and re-import information on just a couple of activities, just as an example, nothing in the relationship or assignments is changing. This whole booklet all the tabs have to be intact. Now I can have a couple activities on this first tab, and I can empty basically these other two tabs, but they have to be there. So you can remove columns, most of them, and you can take the data out from underneath them, but you cannot remove the tab itself. So before we push that back into another file, I'm just going to close that. What I want to do is just show you what I've done to it's just a copy of the same load file that you saw. And just so you know what's being pulled in. And I have, just bear with me a second, this has just started wanting to do this every so often, and of course it picks now. Okay. When you're running multiple screens like mine and they're, yeah, okay. Didn't do this earlier in the day, so my apologies. I'm just going to make it quite small. I should be able to pull it over that way. Because what you want to do, I mentioned it earlier, but what you want to do, of course, before you load these, if you're pushing it into a different file, there is going to still be some information that you are going to have to change. So when I pulled this out, my file is taps temp. I'm putting it into out of the box B001, like OOTB001. So that's all been changed in there. So I'm just going to close that one. And I've done the same thing to the activities one. So if I look at that, and I will make sure that that one is small enough to go across so it doesn't cause us any issues here. And what you want to do is just, of course, make sure it's got just the information that you want to send across. And then, of course, you just send it. So here's my second sheet, and I'll just show you both sheets. And in this case, of course, again, I had to change the WBS. All the rest of this information is exactly the same as what was in the first file. But of course, you know how the WBS works in most packages. The first level here is the project. So what I want to do is close that, and let's just go have a look at pulling this into a file. And you'll see you can definitely pull it in, but it is going to be a case where if you only need certain pieces of the information, you are going to be forced to pull quite a bit of it. Because the columns that you saw in there are the columns that it sends you to, basically. So what I want to do here is I have out of the box imports, it's just an empty file. So I'm going to go to activities. Sorry, I'll start at WBS. That's habit for me because usually you need your WBS to attach to your activities. So what we want to do to import that, actions, import. And we want to import the file. So there's my import file, and I'm just going to say import it. It's a small WBS. It shouldn't take long to pull it in. And once it's finished, you should get a pop-up. It'll tell you that it's tell you that it's done. Import is in progress. While that piece is working, what we can do is go to the activities. And pull that one in. So again, it's just kind of the reverse of what we did before. Activities, import. And this is the activities that we pulled out of the other file. We had to, of course, change the WBS. So I'm going to import that. And while that one's importing, I'm just going to go back and check. And if it's, I have run into cases where it takes a few minutes to pull these in when you're using the import export out of the box. If that's the case, what we'll do is we'll carry on and we'll come back and have a look at this after it's pulled in a little bit later in the webinar. But what I'm going to do here, first of all, just check on the WBS one.
So to do those imports, Marilyn, you got to do them each one after the other. They're all separated, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that's going to be a big difference with our tool. You can do them all in one sheet, one pull.
Definitely, you have to pull the WBS and then push the WBS in. You have to go to the activities, pull it, push it.
Okay.
And that's the same thing for even when you get to export, import of scope or work packages.
Okay.
They're each by themselves.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
So we'll come back and have a look at this. It should be finished a little bit later. It did run a little faster just before we started the webinar, but wouldn't you know, that's the way it usually works. So what we want to do now is we pulled information out of a file using the out of the box. Now, if I want to go and build myself a file, and what I'm going to do here is just go to projects. Okay. We'll take another route. We'll go to workspaces. And I have another file here that let's create a schedule, a small schedule, just so everybody doesn't get scared and run away because they figure it's going to be a few hours. This, again, is an empty file. Now, this one, what we'll do, we'll pull information out and we'll push it in using the OPC-Integrator, and you will see the difference very, very quickly. So what I want to do here is go into activities. And we've got, it's empty. There's nothing in here. There's no filter on, nothing in here. So if I go to the WBS, you'll see it's the same thing. It is an empty file. Now, if this is a little misleading, I've had it do this before. It'll show you a little plus sign, but when you click on it, there's nothing there. So it doesn't have any elements in there. So if I want to use information from another file, it's the same idea we were doing. If I want to do that, but I want to use the OPC-Integrator, I'm going to have a lot more control over what I pull out, what I have to stare at on my screen to make sure I've got the information I need and push it back in. So I've got loader sheets already created, but I want you to see what the inside of the tool looks like. Of course, I better put the right password or it's not going to let me in. Okay, so when you log into OPC-Integrator, you'll notice that you can see I've run quite a few loads, but I've got tasks, in other words, what's been run. I've got download Excel. Well, that's where you can pull information out of your database and put it into Excel. And then I've got upload, and we'll look at that in a few minutes. Now, if I want to pull information out of a file that I've already got created, I'm going to click on download Excel. Now, we've got modules, and I'm just going to see if I can pull this down a little bit. So we've got modules and we've got projects. So I can pick and pull out information based on what module I choose and what columns you can see on the ones that have the edit symbol on them. I get to choose what columns come. So if there is, exaggerating of course, but if there was 400 columns under there and I only needed 5, I can set this up so it'll only bring 5 out. So if I wanted to go into activities, for example, if I click on activities, and I'm not going to take the underlying tabs right now, if I click on activities and I go and look for my project, and I just need to go down here, not too far. Now, this is the demo project we're going to dump the information into. But if I wanted to pull information out, this is the same file we pulled it out with the out-of-the-box export. Now, if I want to set up the columns I want, this is where this nice little friendly pencil comes in. I like that little icon because he's helpful. So if we go in and we look at the columns that are available, if I scroll down, that's all the columns. So if I don't do anything, it's going to be like pulling it out in OPC. I'm getting everything, whether I want it or not. So if I want to set up something where I need to just keep it simple, for example, what I could do is I could go down, and if everything after, excuse me, if everything after the finish date I don't need, all I have to do in here is just select them all, send them back. Now I can even close these sections up now because I've already taken the elements out of there. And if I export this right now, this is what I'm going to get. So I can actually create the pull sheets so that if I need somebody to give me extra information, something like that, give them the fields they need. Don't confuse the issue, just give them the fields they need. I always find that that is easier. Now, once I've got it set up like that, I can say save, but I can also, if I go down to the corner, save and load definitions. You'll notice I've got a few set up here already. Now, if I wanted to save that scenario that I just created in the activity module, I can say save as, and I could say this is update for my cruise, or update completions, anything you want, whatever's going to be meaningful to you, and just say apply it and then save it, and it'll save it. So when you go in, I'm just going to exit out of here for a second. When you go in and you click on any of these, it's going to apply the columns you've got saved behind them. So if you always need to give a specific sheet for updates, and you want actual start, actual finish, percent complete, activity ID and activity description, save a loader definition that says that, and you click on the definition. So if I went to the one that's already set up for update activities and I said load it, those are the columns I'm going to see in there. So it's very, very easy to use. So if we want to pull a sheet out that has our columns in here for this particular file, all I have to do with those two selected is go down to the bottom and say download. And that's where it takes you back to the tasks. And it's all very self-explanatory, very easy to use, as you can see. So I can pull out a sheet with the data on it. And if I download this and I open this, I'll just give you a look at what the sheet looks like. Now, you'll see that when we scroll over, these are all the columns we've got because those are all the ones that were in our definition. So you can see that you've got full control over the columns. Now, what I want to do here is I'm going to close this one. We'll get back to the colors on the top of that in just a second. So if we were going to take a sheet and that I've already got the information in, and it's got the WBS information in that I need, or maybe I'm doing them all together, maybe I'm doing them separately. So for what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to bring this over to the other screen, and I'll show you what this looks like before we load it. So this is much the same as what you were looking at. It's pulled from the same file. What I wanted you to be aware of before we start pulling information in, this is only the WBS tab. Well, sometimes in my experience, you get the WBS breakdown before you get anything else. I don't want to sit on all this stuff. I want to pull it in as quick as possible, because if you wait till you've got 80% of the information, you're usually up against the wall to get it all together and everything. So if this is the WBS breakdown I've got so far, pull this sheet out and you'll see I've got some column headers that have red behind them. That's telling you something. That's telling you those columns have to exist in order to create a WBS element. That's really what it's saying. Now, anything that has the blue with the white background, that is not mandatory. So if you were, for example, making some sort of change and you're only changing the WBS level or the name, something like that, some of these columns don't have to be on your sheet, because these ones are mandatory. They have to be there. These ones, you would want them there for if it fits a circumstance where you need to do something with that column. So let's go in, and what I'm going to do is load this particular one. I'll just show you how this upload works. So just choose upload, choose the file. And what I want to do is just load the WBS sheet we were looking at. Choose the file and just say upload. The rest is in the tool's hands. It's going to do all the work for you. It doesn't matter if that's 20 lines or if that's 2,000 lines. It's got your back. It's going to put it in there for you. So the WBS has been loaded. Now we'll go back and look at OPC, but before we do that, let's load one more sheet. Now in this case, you'll notice with the WBS, I loaded one sheet. The WBS was by itself. It doesn't have to be. So this next sheet, what I've got is I've got the activities and the resources for this file that I'm creating. They are going to be loaded at the same time. And you could take it one step further, definitely, and you could load the WBS as well, that kind of scenario. So you can pair up a lot of different things here. So if I go in and look at this sheet, activity, assignment, and the financials for the assignment. Now again, same thing, the red columns have to be there, but you pick what other information you need to send. So I've got assignments, and I've got some information here that it can deal with adding the assignment without some of this. I wanted a little more information populated, so I left a lot of that in there. You've got activities. So you can see the same thing goes through all the sheets. You've got the red columns, red topped columns, I should say. Just keep in mind that means you need to have that column in there, because it needs that piece of information in order to, in this case, create an activity. So what I'm going to do here is load the activities and the resources at the same time. So however you're getting your information, you can use the tool to your advantage. So I'm going to upload that one, and then we'll go back to OPC and look at the file. Doesn't usually take too long to add that information, so it should be through pretty quick here. There we go. So now what I need to do, I'll just go back to my demo file for the webinar. In my WBS here, of course, initially you kind of do the, it didn't do anything, but you need to, of course, refresh.
It's something to keep in mind with OPC. It is a cloud-based tool, so we don't have total control over when it's up, when it's down, when it's slow. So, that's just something to keep in mind with that.
So we've got the WBS in here. We can see that. So now if I go in and look at the activities, again, you'll just have to keep in mind that you need to refresh. Just as I say that, it refreshed itself. So sometimes it's a little slower and you want to hit F5. So I've got my resources. If I go to one of these activities and I look at resource assignments here, it's taken, I didn't put resources in every one of them. I just wanted you to know that you can load the activities and the resource assignments together, or you can do them separately if you need to. Now, you may come into circumstances where you get a lot of the activities for the schedule, but only some of the resources have been finalized, that kind of a scenario. So you can go back and add more resources as you go. It's not gonna bother it at all. Now, when we're building schedules, we've pulled in the WBS and we've pulled in the activities. Those could have been put into the loader sheet if you need to. If they're coming from another system, you might need to do that. You can definitely do that, and it's going to still help you. Now, the other piece to be aware of course, I'm sure everybody's probably thinking, what about updates? I'm with you. Okay, what about updates? We're building a file. If we've got the file created, we've got the WBS activities resources. If we need to get updates in here, how are we going to do it? How is OPC-Integrator going to help us? It is going to help us. So what I've got is I've got a sheet created that has some updates in it. And this particular one, I have marked which ones do have updates, but I did also create a layout in OPC that is definitely not going to let you miss where the updates go in. So we've got some updates here. You can see I've got in progress activities. So where the kind of, I don't know if that's tan or orange, but anyways, where the highlighting is, these are updated activities. So same idea, you've got your red columns, those are the ones you need to have. Any of these others, you need to give it the information that it's going to require to do what you're asking it to do, basically. So I'm just going to close this, and let's go pull those updates into this file and see what it looks like. So if I go back to OPC and I say upload, I'm going to choose that file. And what I'm looking for is my updates, and I'm just going to upload it. Now, as soon as this is updated, we'll go back to OPC and you'll see right away exactly where the updates are. So it's finished. I go back to OPC. Now, at first, I'm going to, of course, refresh it. Otherwise, it's going to look like nothing came in. Now, this piece I put in the layout just so it makes it easy to see it, because you have the ability of formatting highlighting here. So I had that turned on so you can see everywhere where you've got in progress, it's highlighted it. You can use whatever color you want. So you can see where the updates went in, and all the information is in there for what you've sent across for start dates, finish dates, things like that. I just put them in progress, but you can do whatever updates you need to do. So we've talked a little bit about how can I use it to create a schedule or get extra information into a schedule. So if I needed to add found work in here, I can take the template for the activities, and I don't need the other sheets that are in the out of the box one, and I could just load new activities in. It would work just fine. Same idea as what we did. But the other element here as well is, what if you're an administrator on OPC? How is OPC-Integrator going to help you, or how can it help you? Well, one of the ways that it can help you, I'll just go to the codes here. So if I go down to, and they're a little buried in OPC, that's just the way OPC is put together. So I really am getting to it eventually. So here's codes there's nothing here. So what I want to do, first of all, is add some codes. So I'm just going to bring that across, and I'll show you how easy it is to load codes. So I just need to shrink this down enough to take it across without it misbehaving on us, because that's not helpful. So if I look at this particular load sheet, now when you look at this, you're probably thinking, yeah, not a very good combination of colors. I'm with you. I'm probably the person who can put together the weirdest combinations of colors. But anyways, what I want you to be aware of here, this is a load sheet that was pulled from the OPC-Integrator, and I've populated it with codes that I want to add to this nothingness here, the empty code values I've got in behind. Now, the colors, of course, permit doesn't have a color. The crane code, plant area, and then under plant area, I've got a hierarchy, because you can see area 51 unit 1, unit 5, 6A, all that good information. And then it goes to area 49, same thing, there's units underneath, and 66 as well. So what we want to do is pull this information in so it can create these codes for us. I mean, who wants to go through and type all those numbers, dot, unit, and more numbers, that kind of thing. So, and this is faster as well. So I'm just going to close this particular one, and I'm going to go back to OPC and just choose the file. And what I need to do, it's just this one here is the one we were looking at. And I'm going to say open it and upload it. And you'll see how easy it is right away to load codes. Now, I had one sheet of codes. You could have had 1,200 lines, that kind of thing, easily. So it's still going to do the same thing, still going to load it for you. So if I go back in here now and I hit F5 so we can see what it's done. Now you can see I've got the codes here. So here's my permit code, cranes, plant area, and I've got all my areas underneath with the units underneath that. So all that information is there. But I'm looking at this, and you may not have come across this, but I definitely have lived this one. I'm looking at area 66.
The order's messed up.
Exactly. I'm looking at area 66 and I'm going, I don't think that that's the one I want to go with down here. It's going 57, 55, 58. So I have a load sheet that I've created, and I'm just going to click upload, but I'm going to show you the sheet first, because you can change that right in the load sheet. So that's what we'll have a look at next. And because what you can do, and because these sheets are in Excel, you can definitely use Excel, your Excel functionality to make any of these kind of changes easier for you. So this is the sheet for straightening out the numbering on here. And you'll see I'm going to even fix one other one that I'm sure you saw on the screen, that when I was testing this, I actually missed this. You'll see what copy and paste does. Area 66, area 49. This should be 66, so let's fix that at the same time. Oops. Well, we'll try to anyways. There we go. So when I'm looking at the order here, it is just a change of the sequence number that is going to give you the order. So what I did is I actually sorted them by this particular column, and then just did a fill down with the numbers. But whatever is going to work for you, you can definitely use Excel to your advantage, whether it's using formulas or whether it's, just doing a sort and doing a fill down, things like that, that is still going to be way faster than clicking on one of these inside the software and moving it up or moving it down, that kind of thing. So if I want to go in and have a look at that, you'll notice that I also have another situation at the bottom here. I've got them in the same sheet. That's fine. Software is not going to mind. I'm adding some unit numbers to Area 51. So I can do that at the same time. So that's the sheet that I'm going to load. And what I want to do is close it. Oh, it's because I know. Sorry, I'll just minimize it. My fault. So what I want to do here is choose the file. And it's the revised order and additional codes. So I'm going to open that and upload it. And we'll see how easy it is to go back and reload things and make sure that it's helping you do everything. Even when you have to correct numbers, reorder things, it's still going to be able to help you. So you look at this here and I look at this and I'm going, okay, area 49. Of course, we need to refresh in here as well. So now, if I go in here, you'll see I've got 55, 56, 57, 58. So it's got all of this changed here. And if I go to 51, I've added some areas in here. Now, if you're thinking, okay, can I not do that in the software itself? Sadly, the answer is no, or maybe it's just as well the answer is no, I'm not sure. But if we go to add code, if I click the drop down here, those are the only two options you have in there. So it does not give you an export in the code tab at all. So OPC-Integrator is going to be a big help there. It's going to be able to go in and add a large number of codes. You can build hierarchies, you can make changes, you can reorder, all that sort of information. And we could also assign colors as well if I didn't include that in the load sheet in case anybody's wondering. Now, I'm just watching our time here. There is one more piece I really would like to show you as well. If we go to add configured columns. Now, I need to go to workspaces here. So it's the only reason I'm going to workspaces is because of the way things are stored in OPC. So if I want to add a configured column, or I'm actually going to add 2 in this case. I've only got 2 on the sheet. I could have 22 on the sheet, but you may not need quite that many in most files, but just so that you're aware how easy this piece is as well. So if I'm adding a configured column, configured fields, now if I go in and I look at this, okay, I've already got a lot of columns in here, but I need 2 more of them added. So if I go and look at my last but not least load sheet here, there's a couple of column definitions here for workspace configured fields. Now, if I go over here just a little bit, you'll see where this is the column name where it's coming in here. So we're going to add 2 columns. Now, there's no difference in any of these sheets. All of them, the red is you have to have those columns. The other ones, you need to include whatever ones are going to be required for it to be able to do what you're asking it to do. So I'm going to close that, and let's go back and load that sheet so you can have a look. It does do the same thing, same type of scenario. And I'm going to upload this, and you'll see how easy it is to add basically everything, whether it's activities, WBS codes, or configured fields. So that has been done. And now I want to go in and just hit F5. It always takes you back to the first tab on here. That I'm not sure why they designed it like that, but it does do that. And you can see here's my config 1, config 2. These two columns are the ones I just added. So I can add different types of columns. These are just text columns, but you can specify whichever kind you want and let OPC-Integrator look after that while you do something else. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of an introduction as to some of the places that OPC can be of help. I find it is very, very useful for those types of things. And as Nicole said, there is going to be a lot more functionality coming. So I'll turn this back over to Nicole.
Great. Thanks, Marilyn. Okay, great. So Marilyn walked us through some of the key things we've got in the tool already, and hopefully you saw how much easier it really is to work with the OPC-Integrator. You can pull multiple projects at once. You can pull multiple areas in the software, modules as we call it, and then work with them and load them up. Okay, so this is, again, the foundational starting point of integrating data into OPC. So key benefits really are the ability to move data much quicker, cleaner, potential for automations will start to come along with this down the road, and the ability to give non-OPC users a nice, simple spreadsheet to work with for updating, or even providing budgets and things like that for your projects. So yeah, so we walked through the details. I don't see any questions at the moment, so I think what we'll do is we'll just start wrapping up. So we do appreciate you spending the last hour with us. This is one of many of our software tools. You've heard us talk about our P6 loader. That's another tool similar to this, but working with P6, because these are, of course, different tools from Oracle. We've got lots of other tools that we've built, and we're continuing to supplement those on the OPC side since it's a newer tool. So things like our P6 scrubber, you'll start to see an OPC scrubber potential and reporting type tools. So we'll be working on more and more aspects related to OPC. Now, Unifier as well, so other tools in the Oracle toolkit are part of what we do. We've had programmers on our team from the beginning, 30 years ago. That's we're in our 30th year, so it's been quite a long time. And the reason we've had programmers on the team from the beginning is because I spent the first 5 years of my engineering career working in claims and disputes. And data is so important. So that was a big thing when we launched Emerald, was to ensure that we can do integrations, automations. Very important aspect of what we do. So if you want to reach out, you can reach out to, I'm going to actually share this this one. So you've got Marilyn's info and my info, and we've got Donna, of course, in Philippines, who you can reach out to as well if you're in that part of the world and you want to chat about what OPC looks like. If you want to understand more about OPC and P6, because you might be considering this tool, reach out as well. So we're happy to help and make your use of these tools from Oracle much, much better. Okay, so I think we will go ahead and stop the recording here.